For decades, the Strait of Hormuz has been the world's most dangerous energy corridor, a narrow waterway where 20% of global oil passes every single day. But in the last 72 hours, something has changed. Iran launched one of the largest aerial attacks ever against Israel. Missiles slipped through Israel's famous Iron Dome defense system. Explosions hit inside Israeli territory. And while the world watches the Middle East burn, North Korea has just sent a warning to Washington. This conflict may be growing far beyond a regional war. For years, the confrontation between Israel and Iran had largely unfolded in the shadows. Cyber operations, covert intelligence missions, and strikes carried out through regional proxies defined the rivalry. Both sides exchanged accusations of sabotage, targeted assassinations, and attacks on strategic infrastructure across the Middle East. Yet despite the tension, direct military confrontation between the two states remained rare. That changed on a single night. Following a series of strikes on Iranian-linked targets in Syria, Tehran responded with what analysts described as one of the largest aerial assaults ever directed toward Israeli territory. The retaliation unfolded in waves, with missiles and explosive payloads launched toward multiple locations. Air raid sirens echoed across Israeli cities as defensive systems activated. Missiles streaked across the night sky while interception attempts lit the horizon. Among the weapons reportedly used were cluster munitions designed to disperse multiple explosive submunitions over a wide area, increasing the chances of striking critical infrastructure. Despite the presence of advanced air defense networks, several projectiles managed to reach Israeli territory. Explosions were reported in multiple locations as debris and blast impacts followed the barrage. For residents watching the sky that night, the scale of the attack was unmistakable. The long-running shadow war had suddenly erupted into open confrontation. For more than a decade, one system has come to symbolize Israel's defensive shield against incoming rockets: Iron Dome. Designed to intercept rockets and artillery shells before they reach populated areas, Iron Dome has demonstrated a high success rate in previous conflicts. Using radar tracking and predictive algorithms, the system calculates whether an incoming projectile will strike a populated zone. If it determines a threat exists, an interceptor missile is launched to destroy the target in midair. During earlier confrontations, this technology helped neutralize thousands of incoming rockets. But the night of the Iranian barrage appeared different. Videos circulating across social media showed dramatic interceptions lighting up the sky above Israeli cities. Bright arcs of interceptor missiles rose to meet incoming threats, followed by flashes as explosions marked successful interceptions. Yet some footage revealed something else as well. Several projectiles appeared to evade interception and impact the ground. Fireballs and shockwaves were visible in multiple locations, suggesting that at least some missiles had penetrated the defensive shield. Analysts began examining the scale of the attack. Iranian forces appeared to employ a saturation tactic, launching a large number of missiles simultaneously to overwhelm defensive systems. Even highly advanced defenses have limits, particularly when interceptors must be distributed across multiple incoming threats. Another factor may have been the nature of the targets. Unlike earlier conflicts dominated by unguided rockets, some of the incoming projectiles appeared aimed at specific strategic locations, signaling a shift toward more deliberate targeting strategies. As analysts reviewed the pattern of impacts, another possibility began to emerge. Some reports suggested that the missile barrage may not have been aimed randomly across Israeli territory. Instead, several of the projectiles appeared to be directed toward specific pieces of military infrastructure. Among the locations mentioned in early discussions was a facility connected to Unit 8200. Unit 8200 is widely regarded as one of Israel's most important intelligence organizations. Operating within the broader framework of the Israel Defense Forces, the unit is responsible for signals intelligence, cyber operations, and electronic surveillance. Its analysts monitor communications networks, intercept digital signals, and conduct cyber activities that play a major role in Israel's national security operations. Facilities associated with this type of intelligence work are considered high-value strategic assets. If such locations were intentionally targeted during the missile barrage, the implications would be significant. Disrupting intelligence infrastructure can affect far more than a single installation. Signals intelligence centers often support command networks, surveillance operations, and real-time battlefield coordination. Disabling or damaging those systems could temporarily degrade situational awareness during a conflict. For that reason, attacks on intelligence facilities represent a different strategic logic from strikes aimed purely at symbolic targets. Rather than demonstrating reach alone, they attempt to weaken the operational capabilities that support military decision-making itself. And that possibility suggested that the nature of the confrontation might be evolving. As the confrontation intensified, attention began shifting beyond the immediate battlefield toward the wider global implications. In the United States, former President Donald Trump commented on the growing crisis, warning that the conflict between Israel and Iran could quickly expand into a broader regional emergency. One of the central concerns was the security of the Strait of Hormuz. This narrow waterway carries roughly 1/5 of the world's traded oil supply. Tankers transporting crude from Gulf producers pass through the strait before entering global markets. Any disruption to this route has the potential to affect energy prices and supply chains worldwide. American officials warned that the strait could become a new flashpoint if the conflict escalated further. In response, Washington began encouraging allied nations to contribute naval forces capable of protecting commercial shipping in the region. The idea was to build a multinational maritime presence designed to deter attacks on tankers and maintain the flow of energy exports. Several governments were asked to consider deploying warships, surveillance aircraft, and patrol assets to help monitor the corridor. The move reflected growing concern that the confrontation might extend beyond missile exchanges and air operations. If maritime routes were threatened, the consequences would not be limited to the Middle East. They could quickly ripple across global energy markets and economic systems. Despite Washington's call for a broader maritime coalition, the international response revealed a far more cautious mood among key powers. France confirmed that it had deployed naval assets toward the Gulf region, but officials emphasized that their presence would remain defensive. French statements indicated that the mission would focus primarily on protecting commercial shipping and monitoring maritime activity rather than participating in offensive operations. The response from the United Kingdom reflected a similar sense of restraint. British officials publicly referenced the political lessons learned from the Iraq War, signaling reluctance to become deeply entangled in another Middle Eastern military campaign without clear international consensus. Other major powers took an even more distant position. China rejected the idea of joining a military coalition outright. Chinese officials instead emphasized the importance of regional stability and uninterrupted energy trade, focusing on diplomatic engagement rather than military deployment. Meanwhile, Japan signaled hesitation about participating in combat operations. Tokyo's position is influenced in part by constitutional restrictions that limit the overseas use of Japanese military forces. While Japan remains deeply dependent on Middle Eastern energy supplies, officials indicated that any involvement would likely focus on monitoring or logistical support rather than direct engagement. Taken together, these responses suggested a more fragmented international landscape. While the conflict between Israel and Iran was intensifying, the global reaction revealed how divided major powers remain on how or whether to intervene. As tensions continued to rise, the conflict began casting a wider shadow across multiple regions. Officials in Iran issued warnings not only to governments, but also to international corporations operating in the Gulf. Energy companies, shipping firms, and industrial contractors with facilities in the region were cautioned that their infrastructure could become vulnerable if the confrontation escalated further. The warnings extended specifically to businesses connected with United States economic interests. Iranian commentators suggested that American companies supporting military logistics or energy operations in the Gulf might face increased risk as the conflict continued. The message was clear. The confrontation could extend beyond military targets and begin affecting commercial infrastructure. At the same time, Tehran directed a separate warning toward Ukraine. Iranian officials cautioned Kyiv against providing drone technology or military equipment to Israel, suggesting that such involvement could widen the geopolitical scope of the crisis. The statement hinted at a possible intersection between the Middle Eastern confrontation and the ongoing conflict in Eastern Europe. Elsewhere, developments in East Asia added to the atmosphere of global uncertainty. North Korea conducted missile tests while issuing statements warning Washington about joint military exercises in the region. Taken together, these events suggested that the conflict was being watched closely by governments far beyond the Middle East. As global powers reassessed their strategies, the risk of multiple regional tensions unfolding simultaneously became increasingly difficult to ignore.